When the greatest player in golf history speaks, you listen, especially when he speaks on the tournament he built. That's exactly what happened on June 2nd, 2026, the 50th anniversary of the Memorial Tournament. Jack Nicklaus stood in front of the media. He didn't celebrate. He warned everyone. Nicklaus said something that the entire PGA Tour is still processing. He said, his exact words, "I'm not exactly in favor of what they're doing right now. Not in favor, not suggesting, not offering polite concern. Not in favor." Think about that. A man with 18 major championships. A man who understands this game better than anyone alive. A man who has spent his entire life serving golf. And he looks at where the PGA Tour is heading and says he doesn't approve. And who is he talking about? Brian Rolapp, the new CEO of the PGA Tour, the guy who came over from the NFL. Rolapp is pushing a plan called the two-track system, a plan that will completely reshape the PGA Tour structure by 2028, a plan that Nicklaus believes has serious flaws. Rolapp has said a lot about this plan. He talks about scarcity. He talks about growth. He talks about modernization. But Nicklaus saw something that Rolapp hasn't been telling anyone. 5 issues. 5 things that Rolapp hasn't shared with the players, hasn't shared with the fans, hasn't shared with anyone. And that's what we're breaking down today. Not speculation, not rumors. What Nicklaus actually said, and what it means for the future of the PGA Tour. But before I get into those 5 issues, I want to ask you a simple question. Do you think the two-track system is good for golf or bad for golf? When you hear the word promotion and relegation, does that excite you or does it worry you? Write it in the comments. And one more thing, if you genuinely care about where the PGA Tour is heading, not just the scores, but the game itself, hit subscribe. This channel is built for real fans. Now let's get into it. So let's start by understanding exactly what Brian Rolapp is trying to build. Because you can't understand why Nicklaus is this upset unless you first understand what the two-track system actually is. Here it is in simple terms. Rolapp wants to split the PGA Tour into 2 separate tiers. Track 1 is the elite level, around 23 to 24 events per season. That includes the majors, the Players' Championship, the playoffs, and about 16 signature events. Each of those events will have a purse of at least $20 million. The field size drops to 120 players. And here's the key part. The 36-hole cut comes back. Track 2 is the second tier. At least 20 events. Much smaller purses. Around $4 million each. The field size is bigger. 144 players. And this track is supposed to act as a pathway, a feeder system into Track 1. Then there's the promotion and relegation mechanic. At the end of each season, the top 90 players in the Track 1 standings keep their spot. The bottom players get pushed down. Meanwhile, the top 20 players from Track 2 earn promotion into Track 1. Rolapp calls this creating scarcity. He says it will make every week matter. He says it will force players to earn their place. He says this is how you build a more competitive, more exciting product. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable, doesn't it? More competition, higher stakes, players fighting for their careers every single week. But here's where it gets complicated. Here's where Nicklaus started raising his voice. Because this system doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's being dropped into a calendar that is already overflowing with high-pressure events. And that's the part Rolapp isn't talking about. Nicklaus saw it immediately. He looked at the calendar, he looked at the math, and he realized that this system isn't just about competition, it's about something much more dangerous. You might think this was all Rolapp's idea, but who do you think actually helped him design it? Because this isn't just Rolapp's plan, he had help. And the person who helped him might surprise you, Tiger Woods. The same Tiger Woods who sits on the PGA Tour's policy board. The same Tiger Woods who chaired the Future Competitions Committee that drafted this entire system. That's right. The two-track system wasn't imposed on the players. It was designed with a player's input, and not just any player, the most famous player in the history of the sport. When the plan was announced, Woods called it the most exciting thing in golf. He said it would elevate the product. He said it would make every tournament feel important. And for a while, that was the only narrative the tour wanted people to hear. But Nicklaus didn't buy it. He looked at the same plan and saw something completely different. And that's the thing about Jack Nicklaus. He doesn't care about popularity. He doesn't care about what the tour wants him to say. He cares about the game. He cares about the players. And he cares about the fans who have supported this sport for decades. So when he spoke at the Memorial Tournament, he didn't hold back. He said something that caught everyone off guard. He said he's not in favor of what they're doing. He said the schedule is becoming too crowded. He said too many big tournaments are being squeezed into too short a window. And he said something else, something that should worry every single golf fan watching this video. He said this problem is only going to get worse. Nicklaus didn't just warn about the schedule. He pointed directly at the players and asked who was going to protect them. And that's where the first secret comes in. Because Rolapp has been selling this idea of scarcity and competition. But what he hasn't told anyone is the human cost. The physical toll this system is going to take on the players. Let's look at the numbers. Track 1 will have about 23 events. That's not including the majors, not including the playoffs, not including the Ryder Cup or President's Cup. When you add all of that up, the top players could be looking at 30 to 35 competitive weeks per year. And that doesn't include travel, that doesn't include practice, that doesn't include sponsor obligations or media duties. Now think about what Nicklaus said at the Memorial. He talked about his own career. He said he could play 2 or 3 weeks in a row, but then he needed time off. He needed to recharge. He said that's just how the body works. And he said that's something the current tour leadership is ignoring. But here's the thing. Nicklaus isn't just talking about physical fatigue. He's talking about something deeper. He's talking about the quality of the competition. When players are exhausted, they don't perform at their best. When they're run down, they make mistakes. When they're burned out, they stop caring. And when that happens, the product suffers. The fans suffer. The entire sport suffers. Rolapp says the tour is healthier than ever. But if it's so healthy, why did 4 of the biggest names pull out of Colonial? And why did the numbers keep dropping after that? That brings us to the second secret, the one about the traditional events. Because here's the thing about the 2-track system. It creates 2 classes of tournaments, the haves and the have-nots. The signature events get $20 million. The Track 2 events get $4 million. And the events that don't fit into either category, they get squeezed out entirely. Nicklaus saw this coming. He mentioned the Cognizant Classic, a tournament that benefits his own charitable foundation. He pointed out that this event is stuck between Pebble Beach, Tiger's event in LA, Bay Hill, and the Players' Championship. He asked a simple question. What chance does that tournament have? And honestly, it's a fair question. When you have 16 signature events, all with the same massive purses, all with the same limited fields, all with the same hype machine behind them, what happens to the tournaments that don't make the cut? What happens to the Colonials of the world? What happens to the tradition? What happens to the history? Nicklaus is worried that these historic events are going to lose their identity. They're going to become afterthoughts. And once that happens, they're never coming back. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what this does to the players, the mid-level players, the guys who aren't superstars, the guys who are grinding every week just to keep their card. Because here's the third secret, the one that Rolapp definitely doesn't want you to hear. The promotion and relegation system sounds fair, but it will destroy careers. Let me explain. In the current system, players have some stability. They earn their cards. They know what they need to do to keep them. They have time to build momentum. But under the 2-track system, the pressure is relentless. If you're on track 2, you have to finish in the top 20 just to move up. If you're on track 1, you have to stay in the top 90 just to stay there. And if you fall out, you're relegated. You lose access to the bigger purses. You lose access to the bigger fields. You lose access to everything you worked your entire career to achieve. Now think about a player like Justin Thomas, former world #1, major champion, but in recent years, his form has been inconsistent. Under the current system, that's fine. He's earned exemptions. He has time to figure it out. But under the 2-track system, he could get relegated. A guy with 15 PGA Tour wins. A guy who's one of the most recognizable names in the sport. He could be playing Track 2 events. He could be fighting just to get back into the big leagues. And that sounds dramatic, but it's true. The system doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't care about your accomplishments. It only cares about your current form. And that's the part that Nicklaus has been quietly warning people about. Because he understands that golf is different from other sports. In football or basketball, a bad season is disappointing. But you can rebuild, you can draft new players, you can make trades. In golf, it's just you. If you lose your game, that's it. You have to find it again on your own. And if you don't, you're gone. The two-track system accelerates that process. It makes the sport more cutthroat, more unforgiving, more brutal. But the fourth secret is even more disturbing, because it's not about the money, it's about who gets to make the decisions. This is something Nicklaus hinted at during the memorial. He talked about how he hasn't even spoken to Rolapp about the two-track system. He said he planned to have a conversation with him that week. But here's the thing. The system was already being finalized. The decisions were already being made. And Nicklaus, the most respected voice in the history of the sport, hadn't even been consulted. Now ask yourself this. If they're not talking to Nicklaus, who are they talking to? Who's really in the room when these decisions are being made? Rolapp has a background in media. He ran the NFL's media division before joining the PGA Tour. He has relationships with broadcasters and sponsors. And those relationships matter. But they're not the same as relationships with players. They're not the same as relationships with legends. They're not the same as relationships with the people who actually built this sport. Nicklaus built the Memorial Tournament. He built the Nicklaus Kids Foundation. He's given more to the game than almost anyone in history. And yet, when the most consequential changes in decades were being designed, nobody thought to ask him what he thought. Nobody thought to get his input. Nobody thought to make sure he was on board. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. And it tells you everything you need to know about who's really in charge. And that brings us to the fifth secret, the one that connects all the others, the one that explains why Nicklaus finally spoke up. Because this isn't just about the two-track system. This is about the soul of the PGA Tour. This is about what the tour is supposed to be. Is it a business? Yes, of course it is. But is it just a business? Nicklaus doesn't think so. He believes the tour has a responsibility to its players, a responsibility to its fans, a responsibility to the history of the game. And he believes that Rolapp and the new leadership are losing sight of that. The tour has always been built on tradition, on the idea that the players are the product, that the tournaments are the stage, that the fans are the reason it all exists. And Nicklaus is worried that those relationships are breaking down, that the tour is becoming more corporate, more transactional, more focused on quarterly results and media rights deals and executive bonuses, and less focused on the things that actually matter, the quality of the competition, the health of the players, the connection to the fans. And here's the thing, Nicklaus isn't saying the tour is dying. He's not saying the two-track system is going to fail. He's saying something more subtle and more dangerous. He's saying that the people in charge aren't asking the right questions. They're not thinking about the long-term consequences. They're not listening to the people who built this sport. And if that continues, the game is going to change, and not for the better. Now, this is where the story takes another turn, because on June 23, 2026, the PGA Tour board made it official. The two-track system was approved. Brian Rolapp was officially named the fifth commissioner in PGA Tour history. The system will go into effect in 2028. And the players, the ones who were initially skeptical, started falling in line. Rory McIlroy initially called Track 2 a glorified Corn Ferry event. Then he changed his mind. He started supporting the plan. Jordan Spieth and Zach Johnson expressed concerns about the smaller market events, but they were careful not to criticize the tour directly. The system is coming. There's no stopping it now. But that doesn't mean the questions Nicklaus raised have been answered. They're still sitting there, unresolved, uncomfortable, waiting for someone to address them. So let me ask you again, what do you think? Do you believe the two-track system is good for golf? Or do you think it's a dangerous experiment that could damage the sport for decades to come? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know what the fans are thinking. And if you want to stay updated on this story, if you want to know what happens when the system actually starts running in 2028, make sure you're subscribed. This channel is new, but we're covering the stories that actually matter to real golf fans. Not the fluff, not the press releases, the real stuff. Because that's the thing about Jack Nicklaus. He's not trying to make headlines. He's not trying to be controversial. He's trying to warn the sport he loves. And if you care about that sport, you owe it to yourself to pay attention. The 5 secrets are out there now, and they're not going away. The question is whether anyone will listen before it's too late.